Political complications over Russian President Vladimir Putin's potential attendance of a BRICS summit to be held in Johannesburg later this year are mounting, it appears, and as part of the build-up to the summit, the BRICS Economic Indaba has been hosted by the SA chapter of the BRICS Business Council. Let's speak about where things stand at the moment with Stavros Nicolaou from Aspen Pharmacare, also a member of the BRICS Business Council. A very good evening to you, sir. How critical a time is this for South African businesses in particular when you consider not just the economic factors but also the political problems currently facing some of the BRICS member states?
So, Bekele, firstly, thanks very much for having me on. And I think probably the best way to start this interview is to quote Henry Kissinger, who once said, you know, America doesn't have friends, it only has interests. And I think as a South African business community, we're not aligned to any particular political interest. I think what is in our best common interest is that we look at where the best growth and investment opportunities are going to be derived from. And those could be from the West or from the East or both. And what we can't ignore, however, is that the BRICS formation in economic terms is a very important formation. In fact, the GDP, the combined GDP of BRICS is slightly larger than that of the G7. And we always kind of held out the G7 to be, you know, one of the strongest blocks or formations. So what I'm saying to in very simple terms is that business will look at where the opportunities reside, obviously using the appropriate moral compass when one does business. But at the end of the day, we've got to look at where are those markets that are going to provide growth and investment opportunities. And that is exactly the posture that the BRICS Business Council is taking. And I think furthermore, we're also looking at, as we assume the chairmanship of the BRICS Business Council in the coming days, we are going to analyze very closely the trade and investment patterns across the 5 BRICS countries. And it's indisputable that South Africa's trade with the BRICS countries has grown. In fact, it's grown by almost 45% in the last 4 years. So that can't be ignored either. But what is critical for us is, are those trade and investment patterns necessarily benefiting South Africa? Are there trade surpluses or trade deficits? And we will address those, because I think with any economic collaboration, you need to have a win-win for all the partners concerned. And that is certainly where we will place some emphasis and focus during our chairmanship.
So significant growth. You are optimistic about potential growth in the future, but how great is the opportunity for that to happen when you look at Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, also because all of those countries have such different circumstances economically and, again, politically?
You know, I think when Jim McNeil, the Goldman Sachs economist, I think it was in 2001, first mooted this idea of it was BRIC initially, we became the S in BRICS as South Africa. When he first mooted it, he looked at those emerging markets that could move the global economic needle. And I don't think he quite expected BRICS to get formalized the way it is today into a formalized bloc. But what we cannot disregard is, even back then, there were significant political, social, and economic disparities across these 4 countries. But yet, if you do combine them, one cannot ignore that this is over 30% of world GDP. And as South Africa, you can have a choice. You can either be part of something that constitutes 31.5% of global GDP, or you can choose to be outside of that. And I think you're far better off being on the inside and looking at, as I said, where do those growth and investment and trade patterns, where are they in your favor and where are they not, so that you can address that.
And how are you, as South African businesses, positioning and preparing yourselves to make the best of those opportunities, especially in the context of the major summit to be held in Johannesburg in August of this year?
I think a lot of these partnerships reside around complementarity and of course, sustainability. And we know by an analysis that we've done what sectors offer best opportunity for South Africa within BRICS. But also, we're looking at the exercise very differently and saying which are those sectors that South Africa is strong at outside of BRICS, so that you can look to leverage the strengths that we have, the economies of scale that we have elsewhere, and look to apply those in the BRICS markets as well. So I think that's the first thing we're looking at. The second thing is that South Africa, to a degree, is and continues to be the gateway into Africa, but is also the single African representative within BRICS, and a significant African continental free trade area opportunity exists. So aggregating the volumes and the economies of scale across the African continent and having South Africa as a conduit represents a significant growth opportunity, both intra-BRICS but also for the continent as well. So that's also going to be a particular area of focus for us over the next 11 months or so.
Stavros Nicolaou, good to have your time. Thank you so much, sir.